Good morning. Brother Chad Long here from Delhi Baptist Church, and it's good to be home and back in my office. Um, I have to travel a lot these days, seems like. It's the holidays, and there's lots of running around. In fact, I've got to be in Houston tomorrow, so I don't know where I'll be recording from, but we're going to, I still owe you one from last week, so we're going to do our best, God willing, to record through Saturday this week to make up for the Friday I missed last week. And I guess that's not necessary to do, but I want to have it handy in case someone needs that extra day, or someone just needs to have a, I don't know. I just feel like I owe it, I guess. Some of you are thinking, didn't he wear that yesterday? This is the long sleeve version of the same shirt. They're very comfortable and they're patriotic, and I got a good deal on them. So I've got a couple of them. And if I'd realized before I started this morning that I just wore that short sleeve one yesterday, I would have wore something else. But it's too late now. I'm not going to go change. I was studying over this passage in 1 John, and we'll be in 1 John chapter 2 this morning. And I considered, I thought about in my mind what this had to feel like for people like John and Peter and Paul, because they've seen Christ. Even Paul did get to see him. He appeared before him and blinded him on the road to Damascus. And he appeared to him again, and I think when he got arrested in Jerusalem and they transferred him to Caesarea, the Lord appeared to him and said, "Fear not, Paul, for just as you have witnessed for me here in Jerusalem, so will you do so in Rome." Anyway, Paul saw Christ, and Peter walked with Christ, and John walked with Christ, so they all knew him, and knew him on a very personal level, which so should we. But they saw him in so many different ways than what we do, and so it had to be hard. It had to be really hard, especially at John's age. John was the oldest. John lived the longest. We know that these letters, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, had to have been written sometime between 85 A.D. and just past 100 A.D. when John dies. I think I told you yesterday that there's some who believe they were written before he was banished to Patmos, and then there's now people who believe he may have written them after. Either way, we know he lived in Ephesus from about 70 A.D. to about 100 A.D., and shortly thereafter he died. Well, I said that to say this. He's seen the most from the church in its youth, in its early years. And it had to grieve him, just as it did Peter and Paul, to see the heresies that started. Because, Christianity was the first, I don't like the word religion, because it's not a religion, it's a relationship, but it was the first movement of its kind. I mean, they went from Mosaic law in a way to, which it was always by faith, but the way that you discovered that faith was by studying the scriptures and believing what God had to say. And Christianity just made it personal. You didn't have to go to a temple. You didn't have to, obviously you should always congregate with like-minded believers, but, it was new and it was beautiful seeing people get saved, being filled with the Spirit and doing things for God. And so before the first century's even up, you've got these heresies and early forms of Gnosticism, and it wasn't the only one, which kind of came from the Romans and just taught so many things that were contrary to what God taught. And they utilized Christ where it fit their purposes, but they were perverting the gospel. And it had to grieve them, because Peter spent his whole second letter combating various heresies, and in particular Gnosticism. And John is doing the same thing here. We come to 1 John chapter 2, and a lot of what he's saying is to clarify the doctrinal differences between Gnosticism and Christianity. The Gnostics believe that all spirit is good, and all matter is bad, including the human body and flesh. And so it didn't matter that, the only way to get saved in their mind was to come to this special spiritual knowledge and come to this particular point in your life where God was going to remove the spirit from the body. And so therefore, whatever you did to the body to hurt it was fine. And in fact, fleshly sin didn't affect your spirituality because your spirit was always good. That's what they taught. And it's not true, but that's what they taught. And early forms of it were a little different than what it turned into. But just the beginning of that foolishness, it grieved. It grieved John to watch the people being so confused by something so stupid. And even today, John, and he's with the Lord now, but he'd be thrilled, and I'm sure he knows it, but he's got to be, to see that there are those who have stayed true to the faith for 2,000 years. But then there's those still today who are perverting the gospel. We recently had a believer, well, I'll say a believer, a man in our church who, and maybe I shouldn't tell this because it's such a small church, somebody's going to know who I'm talking about. But he was so confused about whether or not, he's a Christian because he's what's the word I'm looking for? He's led astray by some other religious practices that have got him confused, and he believes also in that enlightening knowledge. And so there's some that still to this day are led away by this. There's some who are so convinced that there's knowledge out there they have to get closer to God, and often what they wind up studying into is secular knowledge and not godly knowledge. Thorough knowledge of the Bible is the best thing a person can have. So anyway, and I've gone way around the mountain to get to the point, but 1 John chapter 2 verse 1 says, "My little children." John's pushing 100 years old. I mean, I don't know how old he is at this point. If he was close to the same age as Christ, then he's and I believe he was. He may have been a little younger. But he's somewhere between 80 and 100 here. He says, "My little children," everybody's little children to him, but especially believers, "these things write I unto you, that you sin not. If any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous." In other words, he's saying, look, you're saved, and you're going to sin, and when you do, your sins are covered by Christ, but don't sin. I mean, try not to. He had to make that distinction because the Gnostics were basically saying that sin had nothing to do with spiritual enlightenment. They had everything to do with the destruction of the body, but who cares about the body? The body's, hindering us anyway. I mean, they were just confusing these folks, and John's trying to clear it up. And he's telling them, look, it's not okay to sin. It's not okay to go and live how you want to live. I mean, we're going to sin. That's a given. I'll sin before this day is out. I'm certain of it. But I'm not trying to, and I don't want to. And that's what he's saying. Sin not. Try not to. And verse 2. "And he," Jesus, "is the propitiation for our sins." Propitiation is a big word that I'm not sure I can perfectly explain. But it has to do with atonement. It has to do with the payment. It has to do with what Jesus did for us. And when he says he is the propitiation for our sins, what he's trying to say is he paid the price for our sin. Which is true. And he says, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. When he paid for sin, he paid for all of it. Now, not everybody accepts it, but everybody has that payment made for them, and they can accept it. If they don't, then that's to their detriment. But they can. Turn it off. I didn't know it was on. I think I got it. It says in verse 3, "And hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments." The word "know" is written a lot. And I mean a lot. I forgot how many times. I read somewhere how many, but a bunch of times in this letter. And knowledge of your salvation is possible. It grieves me when I talk to somebody who claims to believe in Jesus. They say, well, yeah, I'm a believer. And I say, well, are you saved? And they're like, well, I think so. Or hope so, or I'd like to think I am, or man, I sure hope I am, or something along those lines. Well, I've been baptized. Well, I'm a member of the church. I mean, people give you all manner of different answers to the question if you're saved. And I think the reason no is written throughout here, especially in 1 John, which we'll get to, or we're in 1 John, especially in chapter 5, which we will eventually get to. But no is written here a lot, and the point is that you can know. That's what he's saying. You don't have to hope, you don't have to wonder, you can know you're saved. He says, we know him if we keep his commandments. And that doesn't mean that you can keep his commandments. It just means that you make that attempt. It takes a Christian to want to keep his commandments. I get some people mad at me for this, but I have to be honest with you. I don't throw out the whole law. In fact, I agree with the law because the law is holy. Now, we can't keep it, and it's not required for salvation because God knows we can't. But you can't just throw out all of the law. People say, well, what about all those laws about eating pig? Do we keep those? We throw those out. Well, ask your doctor. Is pork good for you? You say, oh, preacher, we sure like him bacon and sausage and pork chops. I understand that. But I think most scientists and doctors today will agree that pork's not real good for you. And God knew that too. Now, I don't think a little of it's going to hurt you. But if you eat a whole lot of it, you probably have some heart issues or things of that nature. So just keep in mind, the law had a purpose, okay? It was to show us our need for a Savior, but it's also for good, clean, healthy living. The Jews were living a long time, and everybody else had stopped living a long time. After the flood, the numbers went down, and we all agree on that. But there were still Jews living to be over 100 when the Egyptians were dying in the 20s and 30s. So keep in mind that the law, all of them, dealt with cleanliness and godliness anyway. So to the best of our ability, we ought to keep the commandments. But the ones he's talking about here aren't those anyway. He's talking about the main two Jesus gave, which we're not going to get to this morning because I talk too much. But the main two, which sums up all the law, which is love God with all your heart, strength, mind, and spirit. And to love your neighbor as yourself. So that's what he means really when he says to keep his commandments. But just the endeavor to follow him and to honor him is the point. That's what he's saying. He says we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. If we make that attempt to follow after him. Not for salvation, but as evidence of the fact that we are saved, that we know him. That's what he's saying. Verse 4, he that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth's not in him. In other words, if you say you know him and you're saved, then there's a part of you who's trying to please him and honor him. If you're not trying to please and honor him, you don't know him. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. It's kind of like my dad, if you weren't his kid, you didn't care anything about pleasing him, okay? Just flat out. If you weren't his kid, why would you try? Why would you care anything about pleasing him? But if you belonged to him, you had a desire to make that man happy. It was just, if you knew him at all, you didn't have to be his kid. You could be somebody on his football team or baseball team. He coached baseball. Or you could be somebody that was closely associated with him, and you'd want to please him. My dad had this charismatic ability to have people follow after him and want to please him. There was something about my dad. People wanted to make him happy. I don't know what that was about. I wish I had it. But anyway, they wanted to please him, but only if they knew him. They didn't know him. They didn't care anything about him. Same is true with God. People who claim to know him and don't care anything about pleasing him don't know him. And that's what he's saying. He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments is a liar. Truth's not in him. Verse 5, but whoso keepeth his word, in him verily is the love of God perfected. Hereby know that we are in him. In other words, if you're trying to keep his word, then you know him. If you're not trying to keep his word, this word I have in my hand, then I would argue you never knew him. And so would John. Verse 6, but he that saith he abideth in him ought himself also so to walk, even as he walked. And I'll close with that. He says, look, if you know him, walk with him. Follow after him. Do like he did. Remind yourself, what would Jesus do? And do it. That's what he's saying. Listen, that's all the time we have for today. I hope that you'll recognize that even though Gnosticism may not, in the old form, may not be what we're battling against, there is so many false teachers and preachers out there, and they scare me to death. There's a lot of people who want to run under the banner of Christianity, and they don't know Him. And people will push some of these folks on me and think, oh, they're Christian, look at all they're doing. And if you look closer, what they're doing is for themselves and not for Christ. You have to be so careful. And I hope that you understand that and that you do watch those things. Well, listen, I pray you have a wonderful day. I do pray that you'll try to follow the commandments of God. Try to follow after Jesus and try really hard not to sin today. But not because it saves you. As evidence that you are saved. As evidence that you know the Father. And that you're saved by the blood of the Son. Let's live as best we can and try to honor our God today, okay? Have a wonderful day.